Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to you all, and thank you for joining us for this virtual discussion on revolutionizing customer experience, one conversation at a time. I am Shri Raj Deshmukh from IAMAI, and I will be hosting this session today. Taking this opportunity, I would like to give you a quick introduction about IAMAI and our partnering firm, Bobble AI. Internet and Mobile Association of India is a not-for-profit industry body representing a complete gamut of digital services in India. We have over 400 plus Indian and multinational corporations as members from various segments for our sector-specific committees like digital transformation, digital advertising, edutech, fintech, gaming, etc. In case you need any additional information on how can you be a part of IAMAI and its initiatives, you can visit our website www.iamai.in. World's first conversation media platform, Bobble AI, is enriching everyday conversations with expressive and personalized content, including stickers, GIFs, and emojis, deep localization with over 100 languages, AI-based contextual recommendations, speech to text, and much more. Bobble AI is transforming conversations of over 50 million users and counting. To learn more about Bobble AI, please visit www.bobble.ai. I would like to thank Bobble AI for partnering with us for this virtual discussion. It is my pleasure to introduce you all to Ms. Disha Shah, Vice President Business, Conversational Tech Solutions at Bobble AI, who will moderate today's discussion. Joining us today, we have a distinguished set of leaders. First up, we have Mr. Gaurav Jain, VP Customer Delight at Wow Skin Science, Mr. Neil Burman, Chief Growth Officer at Yellow AI, Mr. Pranshu Rastogi, Head of Customer Experience at Jubilant Foodworks, Mr. Rajvan Sinha, Head of Customer Experience at Clovia, Mr. Samrit Dasgupta, CMO of Heads Up for Tails, Ms. Soumya Chopra, Head of Customer Experience, OLX India, Consumer Transaction, Ms. Surbhi Gupta, Head of Digital Marketing at Lenskart, Mr. Udbhav Mishra, Senior Growth Manager, M-Caffeine, and last but not the least, Mr. Zinal Jinwala, Head Digital Marketing at Krish Technolabs. Before we start, I would request all of you to please keep your cameras on for a screenshot. Thank you. I would now request Ms. Disha to please take this forward. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and thank you IAMAI team for putting together today's session. I'm super thrilled and excited to moderate this exciting discussion featuring so many esteemed panelists from India's leading D2C brands and conversational AI players. So let me begin by setting some context, right? With an increasing number of services and products vying for a consumer's attention, the primary focus for brands today is to ensure customer delight and satisfaction at each and every point of the customer journey. And this is why every single touch point with the consumer, every single conversation with the consumer matters. It truly matters because even a single positive experience from a consumer perspective has significant and incremental impact on engagement levels, on loyalty of a customer, and hence contributes to higher lifetime value and higher satisfaction from a consumer, right? So consumer delight is inevitable almost in today's world, and more so in a post-pandemic scenario, right? If I move ahead, I think in terms of our conversational AI journey, we are also standing at a very interesting crossroads where on the one hand, we have optimized, we have figured out some of the traditional metrics, whether it's in terms of efficiency of chatbots, whether it's in terms of speed, lowering the costs of support. We have mastered these metrics, but on the other hand, we need to, as brand marketeers, we need to shift our focus, we need to shift gears and see how we can include the other qualitative parameters. For example, the engagement level of a customer, the satisfaction level of a customer. Are we actually addressing the different nuances when it comes to talking to our consumers, right? So like I said, we are standing at an interesting crossroad in the journey of conversational AI, and which is why today's panel discussion is very, very relevant, because we have industry's leading voices and we are here to learn from each one of you where we stand, where do we go ahead together as an industry, and what are some of the new metrics that we should be focusing on going forward, right? With that as the context, I would like to begin by firstly having each one of you panelists share your thoughts on conversational AI. Share some of the things that you as an organization or individual have been doing in this area, some insights, learnings for each one of us to kind of learn from and grow with, right? So I would like to begin with you, Zenul. You represent Krish, and I mean, your organization is an enabler for e-commerce, both for traditional businesses, D2C brands. So let's begin with you. In the interest of time, I would request each one of you to consolidate and compile your thoughts within a span of, say, 3 minutes, so that we have ample time for a more power-packed discussion later on. So over to you, Zenul. Zenul, yes.
Yeah. Can you hear the voice now? Am I audible, right?
Yes, you're audible, Zenul.
Okay. So let me begin with saying that while brands and retailers are leaning on the transformative power of the conversational commerce, the reception and the adaptability is also overwhelmingly positive and promising with the shoppers. The recent stats are saying it all. What are the different stages in an evaluation of an e-commerce business? So there is a start, there is scale, there is growth, plateauing growth or a maturity, and then there is a decline, and there is a renewed growth by implementing change, like whether new features, platforms, resources, or people or strategies. As an e-commerce agency, over the last few years, we have seen brands looking for conversational AI as a part of the initial stages itself, as a part of the roadmap, not at later stages when they're looking for a renewed growth to redefine the marketing and the customer service strategies. So we are seeing a shift. I mean, as consumer preferences are changing, conversational commerce and AI is seen moving from a good to have to a should have list, and probably in some time later we might also see must have list. So when we are discussing on a solution of an e-commerce roadmap or a road path with the brands, conversational AI, which was just considered okay, that is sometime later kind of a situation, or a should have is good to have is more going on a should have kind of a scenario. I guess now conversational commerce is no longer a question of why, we are discussing more on when and how it can be implemented in an e-commerce journey. It's because with customers' appetite for e-commerce, which is on the rise and led to an increased competition, as also number of brands offering undifferentiated products have increased, it has given a rise of a paradox of choices for the customers. And as customers become more aware of their needs, and they are more aware of the products, it has become imperative that companies adopt more creative marketing strategies rather than just traditional marketing to outshine the competition. So delighting customers and with exceptional and consistent user experience is certainly a differentiator, and conversational commerce is uplifting the user experience and enhances the customer delight at various touch points throughout the customer journey. See, I like to make a point here that conversational commerce succeeds where traditional e-commerce is failing. That's the main differentiator. So let's take a step back in a way that conversation commerce it's kind of a throwback from the past, because through millennia we have seen that trade has always relied on conversations. Interactions with the customers have always been a crucial point to effective marketing. But because of the advent of the e-commerce and the recent accelerated shift over the past couple of years, this facet of business development was difficult to attain, the interactions. So consumers are still missing the brick and mortar kind of a model where retailers are evolving to keep up. And I think conversational commerce is where it is filling up the gap. So deploying AI to facilitate dialogues where your customers, it adds the missing human element, which provides a more personalized user experience. And interactive environment definitely compensates for the missing human touch, which is typical of a physical brick and mortar store. And in this recent years, conversational commerce strategy to account for the missing human interaction that traditional commerce always has a gap on is becoming all the more important, as the future, as we say it, as physical and digital combined, which is digital. we have been talking about the today's online, realities. Shoppers are always time-strapped than ever. It's more from now convenience to impatientness. So customers are expecting more for less, delivery in a few hours, and expect the brand to respond in a very few minutes and any time of the day. So what I also believe is shoppers would much more engage in a conversation just rather than just with a button. Modern online commerce is all about interactions, conversations, and Q&A, which is a two-way dialogue. And customers are expecting the brands to address the grievances almost instantly. So it is where conversational commerce becomes more relevant and is uniquely positioned to, corner retail in a way that traditional e-commerce would have never could. Another point on the statistics level, since we already have been discussing the KPIs, see, the traditional e-commerce shortcomings have been always a miserable results. The global conversion rates have barely crossed
I think
3%
let's
mark.
get back to the KPIs and the key metrics probably later, because I'm sure it's
Yeah.
a topic for more detailed kind of analysis and discussion, and I'm sure we'll come back to that point later on.
Yeah.
In the round. Probably I would now invite Gaurav to kind of share his thoughts and views on how WOW as a brand has been approaching conversational AI. I know that you've been doing quite some excellent work in this area. So if you could share certain insights and take us through your journey, Gaurav.
Sure. Thanks. Am I audible, Disha?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. So first of all, thanks Prateek and Disha for having me here, and hi everyone. Yeah, so I kind of agree to Zenul and the idea about the internet growth and the e-commerce growth in India. Looking at our domain and our region, it's moved on from good to have to must to have kind of a requirement in the health and wellness domain. So we, as WOW, we try and educate customers through conversational AIs, because that's the domain that we are in an industry which is leading towards a 10-minute delivery for groceries. It's kind of imperative to have the accessibility factor and the gratification factor to be instinct instead of hours or days now. So gone are the days when we would say that my first response time is like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. Rather, it's in minutes right now. So we at WOW look at ensuring that we connect with our existing customers with the help of conversational AI. This helps us, of course, in retention and the LTVs matrix in our place. We also look at, of course, reaching out or taking care of the scalability part of our support, where again, as good old days, the call centers and the chatbots are gone. The scalability and the accessibility is the key here. Today, with the internet penetration and the mobile users in India is one of the largest or the second largest in the globe. Everyone has a mobile and everyone has an internet connection thanks to Jio. So data is almost free, right? So everyone wants an answer. Everyone wants an education on the product. Everyone wants to know how to best utilize the product. So for us, that's the most important part, that we look at retentions and the LTVs and ensuring the customer journey is smooth. So for us, conversational AI plays a very major role when it comes to maintaining that part of our experience.
Right. Understood. I mean, great points there in terms of scalability, accessibility, and also on the other hand, ensuring that you are able to retain customers on a longer basis and increase their LTVs. Surabhi, why don't you share some thoughts in terms of how Lenskart has been approaching this space and what have, what are some of the initiatives that your team has been working on?
Okay, so great points by both Zenul as well as Gaurav, and I totally agree that with the human touch being very important, and I think with the last 2 years where people have already seen that because of the pandemic, the interaction between human beings physically has reduced a lot. So somewhere giving those kind of a personal touch, I feel that it's very, very important. And especially with lenses, when it comes to eyewear, like people want to go and see it in the store when they want to buy any kind of an eyewear, that how does it look on their face, whether a kind of styles, because there are multiple styles which are coming in right now. So they are coming like cat's eye is there, then round round shapes are there, then rectangles, then different geometric styles are also coming in, right? So people are not sure whether they look very good on, which all styles look very good on their face. So what we have done is this, that we have created an augmented reality and AR kind of a tool on our app, where we actually showcase a person when they open that AR tool. They can see themselves and they can actually choose different kinds of frames and how they look on their face. So we directly show them on their face, and this is a kind of an interactive kind of an AI that we are actually working on, which has actually gained a lot of popularity during these lockdowns, and people have really given very positive feedback about this innovation, because they have said that they don't need to step out of the house, they don't need to go to the store just to figure it out, that what is suiting them and what is not suiting them. So this is one part where Lenskart is moving towards the technology side of it. The second part where we are moving is, of course, the chatbots. Nowadays, everybody knows that within the chatbot, there is the bot always says press 1 for this, press 2, 3, 4. But besides this, besides doing these normal and I think now common technologies, what Lenskart we have as Lenskart, we have moved more towards the regional languages. So where we are actually talking to the customers in regional dialects, and how we so that is something that has been a little challenging also. It has been very, and we have seen very surprising results as well, that a lot of people have actually interacted with people, because, and of course we have done this on mobile platform, because it's much more easier to change the keyboard in your regional languages on a mobile. So therefore we have tried this on a mobile platform, and the results have been really very nice. So that is another part of the conversational AI. And it was challenging because understanding those dialects in Hindi, and like, for example, a certain word, like for example, aam can also mean common, and aam can also mean a mango. So how do we work on those kinds of words which can mean two different things? So those were like some of the challenges, but I think we have actually cracked on one of the we are still working on it. I'm not saying that we have totally cracked on it, but yeah, we are still working and learning in those. And the last thing that we are working on is on the listening tool. Now, in listening tools, also social listening tools, those are some of the conversational AIs. Why I say so is because nowadays the linguistic have changed so differently. It's no more, if something is bad, people will no more so that it's bad. It's they will say not good. So how do we put that not good, and how do we actually connect that with a negative sentiment or a positive sentiment, and then reply accordingly? That is very, very important, because if somebody is giving, and what we have seen is also this, that people start with a positive, and then actually then come to the main point, which might be negative, and then they say. So if we actually start, so the bot needs to read everything, that whether it is actually positive, the average is more than positive or more than negative, and then accordingly reply to it. And after a point, then at which point, what is the ideal point to which you actually move towards the manual is also very, very important, because in manual the TAT might increase, and with the kind of today's youth, the patience level that they have, they might not be wanting to wait for it, whereas bots are very, very quick. So therefore those things also, that sweet spot of movement, all these things are also very good and very challenging, and it's fun to actually work on the conversational AIs nowadays.
Right. Subhi, you highlighted a very important point with regards to, say, consumers in the Indian subcontinent, right? Like regional and vernacular languages play a very important role. And also, as you highlighted, right, a lot of these consumers are also mobile first and mobile only, right?
Correct.
So it's very, very important to take into account these kind of nuances which are unique to a country like India. And and incorporate these into your workflows. So Neil, you have been listening intently so far, and I would like to now jump to you and hear your thoughts about where you think we are right now, where are we headed, and also from a Yellow.ai's perspective.
Thanks, Disha. And as I mentioned earlier, that I'm here to learn. So learned quite a few things from what Zenul, Gaurav, and Surabhi shared. And so I'll start with what Zenul mentioned in terms of where we are today and how we are interacting. But one difference of thoughts I have there is that I think in the last 24 to 30 months that we've seen, we have actually gone through an experience renaissance. I mean, today, the way we live, we shop, we interact, that has completely changed. So I think in content to that, I don't think it's anymore good to have. It has crossed that orbit, and today it's a must have. And the reason why it is a must have is what Gaurav shared, that if grocery delivery has to be 10 minutes, but then with Pranshu on the panel, the nature of the business has always been instantaneous, right? It's 30 minutes or free. It has been like that from as long as I can remember, or I've been ordering pizza. So I think that instantaneous hunger or thirst that we as consumers have has been prevalent always. It's just that technology as an enabler has surfaced out today, which is catering to that thirst or that need that we always had, and brands today are putting muscle behind that and enabling that. And then Surabhi brought in the topic of how colloquialism today is possible. You do not have to only interact where your interactions are very pattern or kind of very workflow module. It is more of understanding that colloquialism and responding to that. And in terms of how we are tying it to a social listening platform, is the same way how we as humans take action, right? So we are both proactive and reactive in nature. I think today where conversational AI has reached is exactly that level, where it can be used as a proactive mechanism to do outreach. It can also be used as a reactive mechanism. And it can be used in a channel of our choice, languages of our choice. It can also be automated to a level where you want to initiate a conversation in voice, where you're doing voice commands, and then you fade it out to a channel as nimble and handy as WhatsApp or a web chat. I think that's possible. Or even if you want to take it to a level where there is a human plus AI element involved, I think that's also possible today. We at Yellow, about a year back in the midst of the pandemic, when we were enabling brands, and most of these brands were at a white canvas. I mean, they were doing automation for the first time. And then there were brands who were at somewhere in the automation evolution journey. When we were doing that, we created a mission, 16-30. That means in the first 30 days, we will do 60% automation for the brands. And that's what we enabled. Pranshu is going on smiling there. So Disha, I will hand over the mic back to you so that you can bring in Pranshu for his thoughts.
Sure, absolutely. Neil, I love the word experience renaissance, right? And I think, as you said, the last couple of months has really accelerated the pace of this experience renaissance. So I love the term that you just coined. Now over to you, Pranshu, because I believe you have something interesting and insightful to share. You've been nodding and smiling all along as Neil shared his thoughts. So over to you, Prancho.
Thank you, Disha, and thanks, Neil, for handing this over. So, at Jubilant Foodworks, machine learning and RPA, in collaboration with Neil, have, we've come a long, long way in the last 4 years. It has completely changed the customer, experience landscape today. While we've seen about, more than 70% of user base, adapting to talk to, conversational bots, but today we are at that cusp of pivot points wherein, if you go out and do a quick market research and, ask your consumers, who would you like to interact with, a bot or a human? I can give this on a piece of paper. 70% people will say, I would like to speak to a human. And that's where you understand that, while there is a very strong, adaptability in the market, when you look at your spreadsheets and numbers, but why is your consumer wanting to speak to a human? For a very pure, simple reason that today the conversation AI is transactional. We've written certain SOPs, we've got certain APIs, we plug them together, we create an RPA around it. And within that, you sign off for certain scripts that has to be spoken to. But the real, delight to a consumer lies to what Surbhi said, Zenul said, that the brick and mortar experience, as kids, or even as youngsters, what happens, to the next mom and pop shop, to my neighborhood, I would go and speak to that uncle and he would be able to recognize me. He would greet me. He would ask me, how is the weather outside? How are you feeling today? He will sell you the most expensive toffee, the candy, from his bar, because why? He was able to create a personal connect. I think conversation AI is at that cusp wherein it will change the next landscape of customer experience. From transactional, this will start touching sentiments. And the moment, you start, through an AI, if you're able to, touch your customer sentiment at the right point, and then, hand it over in case if, the sentiment starts going negative or the customer gets really angry, then pass it on to human. I think it's going to be a great change, for all of us. On the textual conversation AI, quick, just one thought: social media. Now, the world of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, all across, we've seen, the new Gen Z, coming and interacting, talking to the brands. Speed to what, Gaurav mentioned, that, it is important that within a minute you send a response to your consumers. And everybody is running on that, in that race. We can say that, we are as quick as 2 minutes, when we go back and respond to our consumers. But what happens when you respond to that customer? You do not think, because there are humans, typing those responses, just doing a copy paste. I have tried running a conversation AI on my own social channels, as a pilot, and we couldn't get enough result. As in, from an accuracy standpoint, they were just about 50–60%. And the big one, Disha, as we discussed yesterday, is the machine, the AI is not able to understand. India is a very, different geography as compared to, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, all the, other geographies. The sarcasm which our Indian consumer might use on you. They may say, hey, you're a great brand, a great brand, but oh, your pizza. Let me use that word with an exclamation, right? How would you rate that? I'm a great brand. Oh, my pizza. This is a 5-star rating. This is what Surbhi just pointed out, right? But you know what? The AI will go back and say, hey, thank you for your comment. But what happens at the end of the day? The customer is really unhappy, and then he'll come back and say, hey, bot, you do not even understand what your consumers are saying. That's where I think, we need to learn. Honestly, at Jubilant Foodworks, I'm still learning that. But I would really, really want to, go and start a conversation-led bot, transactional to an emotional conversation or a sentiment-led conversation, with my customers, so that I'm able to improve on my speed with less and less of, human interactions or a need of a human taking place there.
Right. Absolutely, Prancho. I think we need to move on in the direction of not just transactional, but adding a more human touch to these interactions. And as you said, I mean, personalization will be a key to it. You also highlighted some of the challenges around understanding the tonality or the sarcasm factor. And I think later on, probably in the more interactive discussion, we'll touch upon these aspects as well. But for now, I would like to move on to you, Samrit. I mean, if you could highlight your journey, where exactly HUFT, Heads Up for Tails, is at right now in its conversational AI journey, and what are some of the key learnings that you've had so far?
Yeah, it's definitely not a joy to go after so many absolutely amazing people. I barely have anything to say. But no, all honesty, I think different brands have different life cycles, right? We have spoken about Lenskart and we've spoken about Jubilant, both which are extremely mature brands and they have been around for a while. So the questions are easier to predict. The fluctuation points are far easier to predict. Heads Up for Tails works in an environment which is extremely consultative. So we don't operate in the same way which most D2C brands would. We are actually in the parenting space. Pets are family. So when a pet parent comes in, we are actually in the parenting space. And one of the sort of biggest challenges that we have faced is how do you really start to look at the input, which in this case is a query that comes, and it can be query in any form, right? Across different channels, across different social platforms that we have, consolidate it, turn it into a query which either is deserving of counseling or is it deserving of just operational management, right? So there are two different aspects to it. We love to counsel. So we love to stand next to people and help them understand what they need. We have not seen conversational AI being able to do that really well because it's very nuanced, right? Extremely nuanced. The moment when you have a double layered question or when you sort of need a lot more, there is an auto human handoff that needs to happen. So that's one challenge that we do face, at least from our industry. Maybe it's the impact of a niche consultative space that we have always operated with. The operational pieces are far more easy to handle in some form. They are what we would classify as about 35-40% of our incoming queries, which in our case, which in the case of most others would probably be a lot more, right? Our operational queries are only 30-35%. But I do understand that a lot of my colleagues here would have operational queries, which would probably be about good 60-70% of the business, at least from an AI perspective, which is, hey, what do I buy? How do I buy? Where is my order? I need to exchange, I have to return, those things, right? For us, that's just 35%. The rest of it is, hey, listen, my dog has severe rashes and it's a 2-year POM, right? And I live in Bombay and we have been using this food. What do I do? Now look at the number of variables in that, right? And that's where I think unifying all these variables into what I would consider to be some degree of constant, which I still haven't seen, or at least unable to see it being useful from a conversational AI perspective. So I think it depends. It depends on which stage of the brand that you're in, and what kind of brand and what kind of industry you operate with. In our industry, it's a bit of a challenge. We work with Yellow AI, so we are trying to do a bunch of very interesting things with them. So Neil's team has been very generous with their time. So thank you so much for doing that. We are trying to see how best we can take that to, a social automation platform where maybe our Instagram chatbots can have some degree of interaction. But it's difficult, Disha. It's very difficult for an industry like ours to completely automate what we consider to be the soul of the organization, right? And listen, customers are impatient, but in our case, customers are also extremely curious, and they deserve knowledge and they deserve authenticated knowledge to the best of what we can provide them. So yeah, I think I bring a slightly different perspective as compared to, hey, I love it. I don't love it as yet. I think I'm yet to fall head over heels in love with the idea of conversational AI, which can be done with the same degree of human sentiment and same degree of double clicking on multiple things. So the layered pieces. I think it's a phenomenal platform if it can be built on top of the human intelligence that's there. The problem really is documentation of human intelligence, and it leads to dirty data because most of us have never done it. Okay. So you can have a bunch of questions, but if your FAQs are shit, which in most cases, most people are because they solve for SEO and they don't really solve for what real humans need, then that's a problem, right? So yeah, sorry, not the biggest fan as yet, because I haven't seen it work for this part of the industry. But in my past life where I was Bombay shaving, it worked really well, yeah. Which I think, Gaurav has already spoken about. Similar industry, right? Person care just works really well. Before that, I was in healthcare and I was in wellness, works really, really well. It depends on the industry. And that's where the nuance comes in. If someone can solve for an industry like ours, and then you're solving for parenting, hell yeah, I would fall in love with it.
That's a very interesting point of view that you bring to on the table, right? I mean, as you said, different industries, different needs, different kind of audiences that you're talking to, and with it, I mean, a need for a different kind of solution. However, I think at the bottom of everything that we've discussed so far, what I feel is that there is a dire need for humanness, human touch, whether it's in terms of counseling your customers, or whether it's in terms of making them feel being talked to in a personalized manner. So yeah, I think interesting points there. I would like to.
I say this a lot. I say that if it's unfamiliar, you have to make it familiar. Otherwise, there's no adoption, right? So we can keep trying to put tech on top of this, but till it's not extremely familiar, it probably doesn't work. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I just have to say that.
No problem.
Yeah.
So I think I would like to quickly move on to Soumya now. Soumya, if you could share your journey and your thoughts on the topic.
Sure. Thanks, Disha. And I think I heard while I was hearing for everyone's view, I think for our industry, a used car market, conversational AI, it's very optimistic for us. We've tried doing a lot of it because for us, the asset that we deal in is a very emotional asset to the humans, the people in our country, especially. So getting in the end, like we haven't seen that more than a 1 minute or a 1.5 minute, I can engage customers there. Beyond that, they would want us to talk. So we are building journeys. What our aim is, if you ask me, that probably tomorrow they tell us the condition of the car, we give them the price and they sell it to us. That's how we would want to do that. Even they select, we just assign, and there's just one visit to them. But currently with the space and with the things that we're working on, we haven't seen a lot of adoption there. We are struggling to find the best answers there. It's very far from, for us industry, it's very far. It's not that easy. Of course, while you're selling the car, but if in case you're buying the car, then it is easier than selling. I will not say that's the crack there. It's easier than selling because I can give you a virtual tour of the car, how the car looks like, the condition. If you want elaboration, we can even show you how some particular parts of the car and everything looks like. But it's not that easy for selling a car because a seller is a price-driven market. For them, the price matters, and for the negotiation is that I can't have an AI, and I haven't seen it or we haven't explored it yet, that an AI can negotiate. We in this used car space, we cannot get over negotiations yet. For the buy, if you buy a used car, we can work on a model of a fixed car shop, but in a used car space, we cannot while selling the car. So that becomes a challenge for us as an industry. But having said and done, there's some steps that we are using AI for, like tomorrow you book an inspection of your car. Just let us know that, okay, before coming to there, I would rather not call and send you an SMS and you talk to me and you tell me or reschedule it. So some bits and pieces like post sales, your RC transfer, you want to know it, just give us your phone number or the registration card, we'll get an update for you. But entire journey, which is without humans, it's practically not possible for our industry that we are operating in. And maybe not even a year down the line, I foresee ourselves or the plan that we are building on, we cannot have too much leverage on conversational AI while we are buying the cars from the consumers. That's a very strong and an emotional market there. They want a personal touch because when customers actually come and sell car to us, they're emotional. Is it the first car given by their parents or daughters or son, or maybe the first car, the last car, all the memories of old couple will have in that car? It's a very emotional value because in India, we all drive, or for us, settling is having a house and having a car. So with that perspective, for us to move in that platform, it's very far-fetched for us, to be very honest. So
I understand your point of view, which is the transactional things are kind of taken care of by the AI algorithms, but when it comes to actual dealings, negotiations, the human interaction, I mean, things which need
the trust also,
right, are not yet powered by AI. Got it. Understood. How about you, Rajwant? Could you share some of your thoughts on Clovia's journey so far?
I would love to. I was waiting for my turn. I was wondering, perhaps you forgot I was there. Because I was a last minute invitee to this. But anyway, I'm glad you remembered. So, see, I think everyone has spoken. All the points have been put forward already. I think this applies to all e-commerce platforms, especially where transaction value is not very high. See, there are two types of customers that we see at Clovia also, and a lot of I think Samrit mentioned that, right? Conversational AI cannot solve all problems, right? People are still looking for human interaction. There are too many variables to solve for, right? And it may not be possible doing it via AI. Now, the kind of customers that we would get, see, first of all, conversational AI for us is to improve our bottom line, right? We can't, operationally, it becomes impossible to interact with every customer who reaches out to our call center or our chatbot, WhatsApp, wherever. It's impossible. So we need to filter out some people, some customers who have regular queries which can be solved at a certain stage. And only those with complex queries actually move forward into the flow and reach a human agent, right? So I think it's more, at least right now, conversational AI is more about the cost part. And then, of course, the brand, standardization, all these things come into the picture. But the first thing is the cost part, because operationally, we can't manage so many conversations, right? So rather than saying no to customers, we have implemented bots which would solve for certain queries. If not, then the option of connecting with a human agent is always there. And in that also, I think there are two types of customers that we get. There are a lot of customers, from tier 1 cities, metropolitan cities, who are more than willing to solve their issues on their own. They would prefer a digital interaction, self-serve, and go ahead and solve it on their own, right? But for Clovia, especially, the kind of segment we operate in, lingerie has been a very brick and mortar, product. And it is also a very intimate product, obviously, right? There are a lot of variables in that in terms of the sizes, colors, material, and the variety of products that we offer perhaps were not available to smaller cities till now, right? In their brick and mortar stores, right? The offering was very regular. So I think Zenul mentioned this where he was talking about personalized interactions. Now, see, we have to provide a human interaction which is similar to conversational AI, which is similar to human interaction in a brick and mortar store, right? That is what we are striving at. But not every customer may be looking for that. Where there are service issues, people come, they want to know about their order delivery status, they want to know about their refund status. They don't really necessarily want to talk to a human in that case. Perhaps they just want their issues to be solved, right? They can go on the contact us page. Amazon has a perfect contact us page, right? But that requires effort. You log in, you select issues one after the other, and then finally you arrive at a solution. In case of AI, you simply type out your issue over WhatsApp, over chatbots, and you get your answer. It is more convenient. So there we are talking about the convenience aspect, right? For the customer as well as for the business. But in case of, especially in case of Clovia, where we are targeting tier 2 and tier 3 cities, for an audience who have never seen these products available within their reach, right, in the brick and mortar stores that they've been visiting. In those cases, they're looking for human interaction to get that assurance to, and giving us an opportunity to build some kind of a trust with them, right? And it is there that conversational AI could do wonders, but perhaps there are too many variables in that case. Because see, right now, we say conversational AI, but it is more or less restricted to pre-programmed queries, FAQs, very SOP-based. I think someone mentioned that. I think Gaurav mentioned that, perhaps, or someone mentioned that. It is a very SOP-based conversation that we have right now. And anywhere, if there is any extra variable that comes to the picture, the bot just goes bonkers, right? And then we have to move it to the agent, right? So, see, in our case, for that matter, we get a lot of conversations over our chatbots, right? More than 50% of them are about inquiries, product inquiries, size and fit inquiries, uh, from first-time buyers, right? Type of cloth, etc. So these are potential customers for us. This will drive growth for us. But ultimately, it is a lot of cost also for us if we have to, if we have to interact with each of these customers individually, right? So perhaps a conversation AI has not reached there as yet, but yes, we are looking for something which will, solve for this human interaction part, where the conversation may not be very transactional. It can't be self-programmed, pre-programmed, right? It will have to be more. And there's one more thing. We are focusing on the intent till now in conversational AI. We're not looking at the sentiment part, right? So, for example, there are there are bots which send emoticons, emojis, hug emojis with thank yous, right? Will everyone appreciate it? Perhaps not. Will some people appreciate it? Perhaps yes, right? So we have not figured out that part as yet. This is a very cookie cutter approach, except it perhaps happens on WhatsApp and you select certain options. This is far from the conversational AI that we think about, right? We have Alexa on our remote. My grandfather is 90 years old, right? So while he's tech savvy, but it is difficult for him to, navigate through the television using the Fire Stick. So he uses the, mic to search for content. Most of the times, the content doesn't appear correctly, right? So perhaps we have not reached that stage where, of course, I mean, these would perhaps happen in the future. But from Clovia's perspective, the things that we are looking at, the human interaction part, vernaculars that Surabhi also mentioned, right? Those things are important, and perhaps they will take time to evolve. Even if they do, there will always be a requirement of human interaction at some stage, right? So we'll have to figure out where we need to give customers an option to interact with a human if they want. I was working with Snapdeal earlier in their customer experience department. We used to get strange, we got these issues 2 or 3 times. There would be people, we could not process their orders, like we had to, these orders would fail in the RTO checking part, right? Because of vague addresses. So addresses would be like Chirag Delhi flyover ke niche. This is no address, right? So one name and Chirag Delhi flyover ke niche. This is the address. Now, people who do not have any addresses, they're homeless people, are also ordering from apps, right? So how do we deal with such people? Do we get them to a bot and ask them to do certain things, which never happens? Voice AI, of course, is there. Voice AI, I think, is the future that we are looking at. But again, I'm sure there will be variables. So as far as Clovia is concerned, the digital interaction part, yes, is important. And for a lot of other e-commerce companies also, we have taken care of that. But the human interaction were required in terms of new users approaching us, trying to become first-time buyers on our brand, on e-commerce portals, online purchases, right? How do we build that trust with them? Is it possible through AI? Perhaps. Do they still need some handholding? Perhaps, right? So where do we need to have that decoupling point has to be figured out. Right. And of course, always keeping in mind the bottom line, because ultimately it's all about cost, right? A human interaction is always better than a conversational AI, right? Why do we go ahead with conversation? I mean, if conversational AI was so good, then we would not be having this meeting, right? I would have 6, 7 robots I would talk to, right? So human interaction is always better, but we are trying to look for more efficient solutions in terms of cost.
Absolutely. Yeah. Highlighted some interesting points there, Rajwant, and we'll come back to some of the things with regards to the key metrics, right? Like cost being one of them. But before we get on to that, Udbhav, we would like to hear from you. How is M-Caffeine approaching this space?
So I think most of the points have been covered till now. I can bring a different perspective from the point wherein we are still trying to build our conversational AI. So we are still trying to figure out a few pointers. So at M Caffeine, we don't believe we are a product company, because even though caffeine is good for your skin and hair, but still the experience of using caffeine is what drives a psychological connect with the brand for the users. And replicating the psychological connect in any conversational AI has been so far the biggest challenge for us, because uh, there are certain aspects we have to maintain from brand perspective. Again, understanding, I think this has been put up by Samrit very well, that understanding what the customer really wants to ask. I mean, I can give you example wherein wherein someone will ask, can I use this scrub on my face? Wherein the reason they are asking is different. I mean, they have a facial, maybe they are having tan in the face, that, but the questions they're asking is different from what the reason they're asking. So trying to know exactly why they are asking that question has been one of the biggest roadblocks in our journey of building a conversational AI till now. But I mean, as the technology evolves, we are trying to, again, as it has been mentioned, that maybe we can solve the transactional / operational part issues first. But if you are trying to have 100% efficient or a best product out there, maybe we are not there at currently at this point of time.
Right. So I think I had each one of you talk, and there are some things which are quite clear. The good news is that conversational commerce or conversational AI is definitely not a good to have or thing anymore. We are all certainly at a phase where we think it is a must have or a should have. The other thing is, and what I gather from the panel here, is that we are all at different stages in our conversational AI journey, right? Like some of us have absolutely nailed it. Some of us are not yet that convinced of its powers, right? So we are all at different stages in this journey and figuring things out as we go along. We've also highlighted some of the challenges which we come across when it comes to the current conversational AI solutions, right? Like challenges around understanding vernacular content, challenges around understanding the not just the intent, but the sentiment behind it. Challenges around just the transactional nature of conversations rather than focusing on the empathy or on the engagement factor of it, right? So these are some of the challenges that we also identified as part of this discussion. What I want to ask you all is there also a risk or a perceived risk from a brand's perspective when they invest in a conversational AI solution? Gaurav, what do you think? I mean, we identified the challenges. Is there, are there any risk factors that you also see from a brand perspective in terms of investing in conversational AI?
Thanks, Disha. Yeah, it's a great question. See, what I believe is the AI solves for accessibility. And as an Indian consumer with different segments, in this age and world, we have been pampered by the e-commerce, the way the e-commerce has been in India by all the brands across. You name it, from Big Billion Days to the Amazon Festival Days. We are being pampered, and at the same time, we've become impatient from the perspective of service, from the perspective of the deliveries and the responses. And I'll be largely correct if I say that we as Indians are more emotional on our psyche perspective, and that's why we have a great Bollywood industry here, right? But at the same time, we need to understand that there is a balance to everything that we want to achieve. So if someone is looking for making 100% great AI based conversation, I'm sure that's not going to happen. There'll be some handoffs. For me, for example, the hands off is only 20%. 80% my conversational AI takes care of, right? For somebody else, probably it's 20% conversational AI and remaining 80% is a handoff, right? But these are the different stages, as Samrid also said, different verticals, different domains, and that's how it goes, right? For me, and we have a lot of examples of airlines, AI, and as Pranchu was saying, the part where it's more like a satire, and being responded in a wrong way. That's the danger that brand has with conversational AIs. But the end of it, as other panelists were saying, that end of it, the accessibility is what we're trying to solve. Okay, from a conversational AI perspective, whether it's customer acquisitions or support, the problem or the challenge that we're trying to solve is accessibility. So at the end of it, there has to be a balance. If a consumer would want to be consulted by a human, there should be an option all the time at every stage of the journey, right? While if the consumer is looking for speed and the answers and the quick and the gratification, the AI part can solve it with AI and ML in place. And at the end of all of this, or the back end of all of this, is structured data that resides for the customer journey. If the structured data is present, if somebody is looking into that data lake and making sense out of it, then it's the customer journey that gets benefited. So that's how I see it. The danger part is, again, without thinking much, just putting up a chatbot or a conversational AI and it's not working out. I'm sure all of us have gone through that, where we're trying to reach to a consumer or a contact center executive, but it's impossible to reach. So accessibility becomes a pain area there. That's my take, that people invest too much thinking that it will solve 100% of the problems. No, sir, it's not going to solve that.
Pranshu, what's your take on it? Are there any, risks that you associate with when it comes to investing in conversational AI?
See, there are risks associated, with conversation AI, no doubt about it. In fact, with every new thing that happens in the market, there is a risk associated to it, and you cannot do away with it. The point is, how much do you want to expose your consumers, and how can you avert that risk? That's more important. To the point that Gaurav said, that if you were to expose your consumers to a conversation AI, and God forbid it goes wrong, you would not be in a position to take that amount of flack. So how do you do the right pilot or a POC? I can very easily, do this, when it comes to social platforms. Why? Because there is always a way to, download and complete data for the last 6-7 months, run it on the engine, and understand what is the machine saying, what the kind of responses that are coming in, and then you do a human QA over it. But what do you do in chat? Chats are live chats. You can't really download, because it's a mix of the bot response and the consumer response. How do you bring that in place? That's one risk that I see. And the second, which no one has spoken about, we're talking about burning our dollars. How do you put an ROI to this? That's my favorite topic. Every organization is, we want to invest in customer experience, because that's the next leg of growth. Your customers will only come back if you have given a great post-order customer experience to him. But at what cost?
Right.
So is there a very clear, measurable, written, documented, grid which can tell you that if I was to invest $1, I get 1.5? If that's set on the ground, I think we have a winning case with us.
Right. So I think I will shift the focus from the brand side to the conversational AI players. People who actually build the solutions. And Neil, I come over to you, right? We heard from the brand's perspective, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the risks, some of them probably even perceived risks, right? And are these manageable? Are these solvable? And to what extent? I would like to understand from you.
Yeah, so thanks, Disha, for that question. Some of the pointers which were highlighted, right, in the panel, it's kind of a deja vu for me. In about 2017, 2018, right, when I started selling conversational AI as a platform, and I started with Yellow. We were selling it in India and also in the nearshore regions. So primarily when we had taken it to Southeast Asia at that point in time, we had to literally shout from the rooftop, saying, "What is conversational AI?" Because why is it just not? Why don't you just not call it a chatbot? Why you call it a conversational AI platform? So some of the pointers which got resurfaced today in this panel are in terms of the inability of the technology to understand sentiment, or the technology today, although trying to be an enabler, but is becoming very monotonous. So I would say that was probably the chatbot 1.0 era, I think, and from the time the focus, and I think the focus multifolded in the pandemic era, or even prior to that, the CX focus have taken such a pinnacle for the brands. I mean, it's a competitive edge for any brand today, whether they want to give that focus to CX or not. And in trying to do that, bringing in the automation layer with intelligent machine learning capabilities, and it's you don't. I mean, today we've gone layer on layer, right? So we have gone from an NLP to an NLU engine, enabling that, and today we literally can't. I mean, as a brand, I think no brand today has the ability to hit the snooze button when it comes to CX. You are omnipresent, and you have to have the capacity and the capability to cater to your consumers on any channel of their choice, of any language of their choice, and adding to that in the sentiment that they are in. You have to offer it to them that way. I mean, I think Gaurav mentioned earlier that thanks to Jio, there's internet in every hand today. I would say thanks to Jio that brands could serve consumers even in the pandemic, because the ability of going digital and reaching to consumers digitally and enabling engagement, care, and commerce seamlessly through conversational platforms or through smart messaging platforms, enabling it over chat, enabling it over voice, and getting the entire 360-degree gamut of business done was made possible because of this. A lot of it, of course, in tier 3, tier 4 cities, a lot of these conversations that erupted, no doubt they were accidental discoveries. It of course happened, but I think the adoption, there was a significant tailwind with the pandemic that gave the adoption of conversational platforms in tier 3, tier 4 cities. We have interacted, and I would like to share an example. Disha, it will take about 20 seconds. We were interacting with a pretty large Indian traditional FMCG brand, and this was in the middle of the pandemic. And the problem statement that they gave us was, how can we go the big basket way without having to own that app? That was a problem statement that was given to us at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. is when we had got that problem statement. We went back to them in the evening, and at 11 p.m. we signed the contract. And what we enabled for them was the entire D2C engine on WhatsApp. That's what we did for them. And we had multiple similar engagement, multiple similar use cases, multiple similar adoptions. And I'm sure all the brand custodians and the brand owners here on this panel, right, would have similar stories to share.
Right. So I think you touched upon an important point, right? I mean, conversational commerce and most of it being enabled by WhatsApp as of today's date as we speak, right? So, I mean, how do we as an industry or brand marketeers perceive our relevance on a single platform, which is WhatsApp, and wherein we are heavily invested for our conversational commerce needs? So I want to understand from the panel here whether, I mean, we need to de-risk ourselves, probably get onto other platforms. If yes, I mean, what are we doing to de-risk ourselves, right? So let me jump over to you, Samrit. If you can share some insights there. I mean, what is your take on our reliance on WhatsApp based conversational commerce, and how do we kind of make ourselves risk free?
I get it. We have to be where the customer is, right? We can keep wanting to de-risk it. It's irrelevant.
Right.
The fact is, it's a moot point, man. It doesn't matter, right? If WhatsApp adoption is WhatsApp adoption, we'll need to be there. As much as I hate it, I still spend money on Facebook to advertise. Everyone has Instagram. WhatsApp is ubiquitous and omnipresent. We can try to de-risk it, but we can't run away from it.
Right. What's your take, Zenul, on the dependence on WhatsApp-based conversational commerce? I mean, you were the one who initially opened the conversational commerce theme, so looking forward to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, Disha. So I agree with Samrit. I mean, if WhatsApp is very popular, you have to be there. So what marketers, as we are looking at, is whatever is trending, we want to be there. So, at the same time, if WhatsApp is picking up and is so much finding adaptability and usability within users, then we want to tap those channels as well to get to the consumers. See, over dependence on anything can be definitely risky. You have to diversify. But at the same time, we need to pick up on what is trending in the market and then go on for leveraging those. I mean, there was a time where we actually started discussing TikTok ads for our brands as well, because TikTok was very much picking up here. But considering the geopolitical risks as well, TikTok is no more here. So understand the scenario, or let's say we put up a scenario wherein we have invested a lot for TikTok and then TikTok goes off the planet, or the something that is going off completely off the hook for a specific geography. So that can be definitely risky. The alternative solution also can be whatever core of your engine that you have been for bots and the conversational commerce should be agile enough so that it can be integrated to various other anything that might come up in the future. Marketing is very much unpredictable, but at the same time, whatever is trending, we have to get on to the hooks on all those. Yeah.
Right. Understood. I just wanted to kind of also shift gears and come back to the point of ROI, right? I mean, most of us spoke about ROI because as a brand or as a marketeer, it's very, very important to track how the money we have invested in, especially when it comes to conversational AI, is creating a business impact. So, Surbhi, if I can ask you, I mean, what are some of the ROI metrics that you would want to look at with regards to the future of conversational AI, right? I mean, we talked about lowering the costs, increasing accuracy, efficiency, but what else is needed to make the ROI metrics more sound and more holistic?
So, see, as it was, as our panelists already highlighted, that ROI from a conversational AI is a little difficult to get right now. So honestly, the end business, how do we track that is still a very big question for us as well. But what we actually look at is on the engagement rate, that how quickly that the customer was there, was being engaged, how quickly was he get convinced with regards to, and how quickly was his any of the query that he raised was actually resolved. So that is one part of for us, because that also for Lenskart, of course, the brand name should not get, so the brand name is also a very important factor, right? The goodwill of the company is also an important factor. So that's where somewhere we actually tend to help, because when we look at our chatbots, there are a lot of people, like for example, if people ask them that what is the kind of a frame that you're looking at, or what is the frame size, so people don't even know how to check the frame size. So that is where we help them that you check with this. Like 30% of our sales happen for our progressive lenses, but people don't know how to measure those progressive lenses, the distance, the reading, and all this difference. So those things, although they are already inserted in the conversational AI, but these are important factors. But from an ROI perspective, honestly, currently we're looking at the engagement rate. We are looking at the people who are coming from this chat, and also moving the customer journeys that are moving towards the end-to-end users within that same session. That is actually something that we are looking at and we are tracking.
Right. Rajwant, how about you? How do you look at ROI metrics evolving in the future?
I think it's not so much about the ROI, but ultimately we're looking at reducing costs, right? The operational efficiency part that I talked about. So if we are spending, say, a rupee on this, ultimately what is the revenue, what is the growth that we're able to generate, right? So it's the ROI part is very much that if I spend a rupee on creating conversational AI, and I'm able to service X number of customers who will get me a lifetime value of so and so, right? That's pretty much what we are looking at right now. Of course, engagement and experience, standardizing the whole experience part. There are some abstract things which can't be measured per se, right? But ultimately, everything gets reflected in the growth that a brand gets, right? So how we attribute it, I think there'll be metrics to attribute the whole thing to conversational AI also. And one thing I would like to mention at this point, which perhaps I don't think anyone mentioned. See, we are talking about conversational AI, and we are mostly focusing on people approaching us, the WhatsApp chatbot, like you also mentioned, right? Over reliance on WhatsApp. I think when we talk about conversational AI, there's a lot in this domain of marketing that we can do in terms of how we communicate with customers, right? Right now, of course, there's a lot of personalization, customization is there, but ultimately the customization is on what products we are showcasing to customers, right? Based on what they have done in the past. But the whole content of communicating remains the same. The tone which we use for different customers remains the same. The emailer that you would get would be the same as what I would get, would be the same as what someone in a tier 3 city would get, right? So we are not, we have not started exploring that part. And when we are actually using conversational AI to its full capacity, a lot will actually happen on the, see, service flows is one thing. People who have approached us on our bot platforms have already engaged with the brand, right? But when you are communicating with people, with prospective customers through email marketing, through SMSs, through WhatsApps, right? How do you engage with them using AI? Promotional messages that we have done this at Clovia also, we have started sending. Now that's not exactly conversational because it isn't two-way, but ultimately when you are communicating, customers would come back and communicate with you at a later time, right? So the promotional messages that we are sending on WhatsApp, they're customized in such a way that we'll call out the name of the customer in the message. So suppose we loop in a celebrity. Suppose we loop in Hrithik Roshan. Now Hrithik Roshan will say, "Hi Disha, we have not seen you in a while, right? This is a happy birthday to you, and this is a offer uniquely for you, right? Something like that." So, and we should be aware of the kind of tone that you would prefer. A Generation Z person would prefer a different tone in the communication as compared to, say, someone who is perhaps 50 or 60, right? So that part also has to be assimilated in the whole conversation about conversational AI. And then the ROI part comes into the picture where, okay, I'm spending so much on enabling technology, and this is the return that I'm getting. Now, this is a very complicated, the metric will be a very complicated one to attribute something, to isolate one particular activity and, attribute growth to that activity would be a very complicated task, right? But of course, attributions happen in businesses, and that's how we decide on what to go ahead.
Right. So that's an interesting point, right? And in fact, at Bobble AI, that is also what we believe in, right? Like personalization, customization, localization of communication that's happening with consumers, because not every consumer is identical, right? So Zainul and Neil, very quickly, what is your take on the ROI metrics? Are some of these things as abstract as they sound? How can we measure these? And how can we kind of get brands to put them into real business metrics, right? Zenul, you want to go ahead first, and then I hand it over to Neil?
Sure. Okay. So like I was saying last time, on what are the shortcomings of the traditional e-commerce conversion rates. So, if you look at it from a perspective, then traditional e-commerce shortcomings are, we have never been able to barely scratch the 3% mark. Now, conversational commerce brings in the promise that the boosted conversion rates can be even 4 times in the traditional shopping sites. Why? Because where traditional e-commerce is static, one size fits all and rigid, and e-commerce is more of dynamic, personalized and adaptable, especially with artificial intelligence. So personalization of content as per what the interest level of the person was in a customer journey is very much possible. It's a two-way street because it is, two-way dialogue which is happening. Let me also try to explain you from a Google's perspective or a content perspective. See, we are all, and we can never be ignoring the search engines, of course, because most of the brand discoveries are happening through Google. There is a Google informed audience. But in the race to please Google search engines and so on, e-commerce websites and interfaces have more become, stockpiles of indexable information. We are more towards whether these keywords or search intents are being searched so that we can be on the top of the mind of the person, and we are on the site because the content is written in that way, because I don't want to miss on any of the search intent that my consumer is doing for. But then still, as a result, these e-commerce sites have become more of lifeless and monotonous and boring. That is where we also see that conversational commerce is designed to cater to the most natural human tendencies. It is to convert, to connect or to converse, wherein, I don't find the information on a screen, but it's more of a conversation wherein I'm thrown suggestions at something, and which is more personalized to me even after the engagement on the site. Now, specifically on the investment in the ROI, we always face these questions as, if I invest X, and what would be the direct Y as we see, because in traditional marketing or in traditional KPIs, whatever we invest, for an example, in ads, I've invested, let's say, X amount, and X plus 300% is my ROI that I attribute to a single channel. So specifically for this measurable ROI ROIs that we see, it also depends on the business objectives and the strategies that the company is looking down to achieve through this set of tools. For specifically looking at the conversational commerce, it could be even the metrics wherein we see a CAC reduction, where is customer acquisition reduction cost is happening, a retention, or a bigger picture on saying a CLTV improvement. What is the customer lifetime value improvement that is happening? What is the CSAT and NPS improvements that are happening, which is more on the qualitative aspect also. Now, these qualitative aspects are not directly measurable in terms of stats, but they are invested back somewhere which increases the purchase behavior and ultimately results in whatever an entrepreneur is looking down for, the sales and the revenue that can be driven from an e-commerce store. So look at also from an acquisition versus retention perspective. I mean, CC and a conversational commerce is also affecting the metrics. What we have seen is, we spend a lot of marketing dollars just for customer acquisition, but we see that there is a higher conversion rate, which is coming down from the returning users. Now, returning users would be definitely coming in because they have found a delight engaging with your brand, and that's the reason they came down. It can be any part of the customer journey, whether it was a consideration phase or an awareness phase, or basically going on for a buying phase. But that's where they are returning back, or whether the service was delivered to the mark that the person was looking down for. So where retention also plays a role and they have higher conversion rates, that also should be taken into perspective. I completely agree that how we attribute. So attribution of this, the ROI improvements to a specific channel would be definitely a complex matter, because how this is plowed back into the system and which channels then perform. For an example, a lot of insights can be gained from what are the customers asking for, or what is something that they are looking for, and which can be plowed into more of ads automation or even content marketing automation. So when those channels are working and giving you an ROI, then direct attribution to a specific channel might be very difficult and a subjective matter.
That's an interesting point with regards to attribution of ROI. Neil, what's your take on these? I mean, are these really as abstract as they sound, and how best can we measure the ROI?
So I'll give a multifold answer to that. So let's start with bringing in the human element. Let's eradicate the presence of technology. Let's bring in the humanized component here. The cost of human support is only going up by the day. I mean, we have seen multinationals flocking to India, China, Philippines. Now probably the options are Egypt, Lebanon. These are now the options. So how much can we keep it humanized? And then there's a cost to continuously keep enabling the workforce as well, right? So that's where technology comes into play. A global average of probably resolving a ticket today is anywhere in the range of $20 to $22, whereas by enabling technology, you can probably bring that cost down to maybe $1. That's a direct impact on your bottom line. That's doable. Second is the point that Zenil mentioned, right? That if you are creating that ecosystem, and that's what I was discussing with Pranshu before we started the panel, that see, you have to create an ecosystem where all your enterprise records needs to be connected. Look at the conversational platform as the enabler, where you're connecting all your enterprise records. I'm not sure how many of you have actually seen the screen that a contact center agent takes call from. The reason a personalization becomes possible there, because you're displaying every information that he needs to consider when he's interacting with a customer. A similar interface can be enabled in an automation or in a bot framework as well. Connect all your enterprise applications with the bot. We have done some bot enablement for a few of the multinational brands for their enterprise or internal consumption, where we have done an orchestration of 200 child bots at the back end with a singularity layer at the front end, where employees, about 80,000 employees across 80 countries, are talking about their HR, IT, finance, every query on a singular platform. But at the back end, it's a massive orchestration that has happened. Right. There probably are thousands of applications that's running in conjunction with those bots, bringing in that personalization. That's possible. Now, if you're able to build this kind of an ecosystem, then your engagement, the transactional ability of the bot in terms of doing commerce, and your customer or consumer stickiness with the brand, everything is going to be possible. I don't think it's abstract, it's measurable. And then of course your NPS, CSAT, all those come in with this interaction. I think it's pretty much measurable, but how far are we in that evolution? That's questionable.
Understood. So I think we have 8 more minutes until the closing time. But before I jump into the rapid fire round with each one of you, I have one question for Samrid, Udbhav, and Surbhi specifically. I mean, I understand that you guys are at a journey in conversational AI where you need to be convinced on certain things, or you need certain things to happen to take it to the next level, right? So if you could highlight 1 or 2 things which, if those conditions are met, and I mean, if what are those things and how would they help you to get to the next level of your kind of business goals or business growth? So let's take it with Udbhav first. Udbhav, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So for us, what's very important is making sure the bot or the conversational AI represents a brand. I mean, when you go to a physical store of, let's say, a Nike or a KFC, there are difference in how the person in front of you converses with you. I mean, two AIs of two different brands cannot sound similar. So as a brand for Mcaffeine, it's very important for us to maintain that tonality, brand tonality in any conversation we have with any of our users, be it customer service, be it social media, be it on the website. So for us, that security or that ensuring that brand tonality and brand representativeness through our chatbot is very important, and that really helps us take it to the next level. I mean, that's what is the biggest block road at this point of time for us.
Right. How about you, Samrit?
I think it's a journey. There's not one specific thing, right? You can't just deploy one thing and hope for that to work, and then everything else falls in place. We've already started on the journey. The way I look at it, I think there are three things. If they could sort of come together at some point, that'll be fantastic. One is the ability to really sort of build a funnel which is across platforms, so that it comes together at one point. Right now, imagine a conversation that happens, let's say, on an Instagram DM, where I am deploying a chatbot. That, coupled with what's happening on the website, coupled with what's going to happen, let's say, on a LinkedIn post, I need a unified view. Otherwise, it just gets extremely difficult. A bunch of stuff that comes our way is grievances, and those grievances sit across multiple platforms. Imagine a Twitter piece, just completely grievance-led, unfortunately, in most cases. So there has to be some degree of unification of this. I know that chatbots don't do it, or at least I haven't seen one do it. But, so that's one. I might be completely proven wrong, and I'm assuming I'm wrong in this one, where chatbots do it, but I haven't seen it as yet. The second piece, I think, which is extremely important, is to really gauge depth of conversation, right? I think someone mentioned this. It was about sarcasm. No, in my case, it's not sarcasm. It's more about there's depth. So there's layered. There are multiple variables being posted and asked for in the same thing. I can't have the bot answer just one thing, especially when there are multiple things, right? So it's a broken journey then. I think the third piece is just the UI of most of this. It's still very intimidating. We can look at WhatsApp commerce, for example, but it's not friendly when you have like 20 photographs that come one after the other. It's terrible experience. And for brands like us, which pride on the experience that we give our customers and our patrons when they walk into a store, or even when they come to our website, it's not the best possible piece, right? And I understand that there are limitations to it. So WhatsApp was a terrible example because they don't open up a bunch of things. But at least at the AI level, at the app level, or the bot level in this case, the UI has to be phenomenal. I would love for these three things to come together. And if they do, then maybe it's a good start.
Got it. Surbi, you want to take that quickly?
Okay, so for us, Lenskart being a fashion brand, so we are targeting mostly younger generations. So if I want a conversation, since it's a conversation, so the AI needs to be a quick learner also. There needs to be a continuous learning process, because the younger generations, every day there are some or the other short keywords that they keep using rather than typing a longer sentence. So therefore, the AI should be able to understand their language and the lingo, and should be able to interact accordingly.
Right. So
So I
the
guess
AI
it's a
needs to be
continuous
agile
learning.
enough to understand the evolving lingo.
Correct. So they should be as per the younger generation. If they say God bless you instead of God bless you, they write GBU. So the AI should be able to understand that what does GBU mean.
Understood. Fantastic. So I think we have 2 more minutes left, which is perfect timing for us to go through a quick rapid fire round with all of you. Very quickly, I want to hear from each one of you, probably 1, 2, 3 top trends in this space that you are betting big on. Like look at, say, 2-5 years down the lane, some of the key trends that you think will be dominant will be a complete game changer, right? So I begin with you, Pranshu, very quickly. Let's begin with you. Yeah.
The next big leg, a little too early, but that's going to be metaverse, taking over, integrating itself with conversation. AI, of course, nothing would work without an AI. I would love to see, some of your shops around Decentraland spend some mana over it.
Got it. How about you, Udbhav? What are you betting on?
So in the short term, I guess Gen Z is very comfortable in texting more than anything else. So I think interacting with Gen Z customers is a big space for conversational AI because they are very comfortable texting more than any way else of conversing.
Got it. Zenul?
I completely agree with Pranshu. I mean, the metaverse is the next evolution in digital interactions. It's changing the way how buying gets done, from physical stores to e-commerce, now to virtual stores. So the question for marketers will be, where will your new customer and the next customer be? And conversational, AI and rich media will bring to life, powering human-like avatars and as well as humanizing artificial objects, which will be bringing in enabling meaningful and natural conversations to multiple modalities. So it's interesting to see how the future goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, digital avatars, personalized conversations is the way to go. Gaurav, I want to quickly hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, the metaverse is one, but for me, the near next one holds is a proactive reach to the customer from an AI perspective. I would want today the AI is more reactive by nature. I think I see a very strong possibility that this would become proactive. I would reach out to my customer saying, hey, you didn't order pizza from last 30 days. What's going wrong? Or probably you've not ordered for a shampoo. What's going wrong? So I would rather see that first happening.
Interesting. Wonderful thought there. Rajwant?
Sorry, thank you for the pizza, Gaurav.
Yes, metaverse is always there, but see, from a short term as a business person, I mean, what I would want for my brand, right? I think the marketing communication part, the content part, we need a lot more personalization there based on AI. One is that which we have, no, I don't think anyone has provided for those that solution as yet. And the other is handling complex conversations over AI, whether that will be through voice AI, which I mean we have started working on already, right? So these two things, voice AI and complex conversations, and the other is marketing, the content personalization part, which I think will be very important to engage with customers.
Got it. How about you, Neil? What are you betting big on?
So as an organization, we are again metaverse. So we are in fact doing our flagship event called Envision. We are actually doing that entire event, and the theme of the event is your business in metaverse. So of course that's what we're looking forward to, and yeah, hopefully we will see automation in a completely new avatar, the way we aspired automation to be.
Got it. Got it. Surabhi?
So as Lenskart is an omni-channel organization, currently what happens is this, that the tracking between the offline stores and the online, that tracking is somewhere not there. So I feel that metaverse and AI, all these things are good, and they will be, of course, there, and that is something which is moving in. Somewhere I feel that AI actually replaces humans. So I'm not too gung-ho about the AI, but yeah, if it helps with the data part, great. But somewhere I want to work on more on the tracking part, where from an offline to an online, we are able to do that smoothly. From a television campaign to an online, how the traffic has moved. Those things I wanted to move to understand much more better from a digital point of view. And plus being a direct to channel D2C also. So what customer actually looks for, and how do we understand those customer needs and the demands, and actually does the supply, and accordingly show them this merchandising. I think that is something that I feel that is going to be an important part in the future.
Right. And very lastly, Samrit, over to you.
Why do you always put me for the last? I absolutely have nothing more to say. No, voice for sure. Voice, reverse image searching. I think that's a big one for me. People should just be able to take photograph and upload it. any kind of lens integration. I think just cameras are just getting far more intelligent. So if you can use those to build out maybe some degree of an automated piece, I would love for that to happen. I love the meta idea. I just think that it's still very fragmented for it to really start making business sense, at least for the next few years. That's a long way off for me. But I'd love to see voice getting far more front and center. Yeah, so much massive opportunity. We are a country where there is such diversified language, right? And complexity of language and nuance. That if we can tap into that, that's probably the world's largest repository of nuanced language level NLP, which is both voice enabled as well as text enabled. Imagine if that can happen. No other country has this level of complexity of language that we do. Someone needs to crack that. So yeah, I'm excited about that if someone can do it.
Awesome. So I think with that, we come to the end of our discussion. It was truly a very thought-provoking, insightful round. I personally have learned a lot from each one of you and have a lot of pointers jotted down as well for, I think all of us probably when we go back, there's a lot of food for thought for all of us. So thank you guys. This was truly amazing. And I hand it over to the IAMAI team. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, the discussion was indeed very insightful and full of learnings, and we had some key takeaways as well. We hope all of you enjoyed being a part of it too. And on behalf of IAMAI, I would like to thank the moderator, Ms. Disha Shah, our esteemed set of panelists, for taking out time and joining us today. I would also like to thank the Bobble AI team for their faith in us. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from us for today. Thank you so much, and please stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.